Hey everyone, and welcome to the very first episode of Ravens Across the Pond, the European Ravens fan podcast, where we're going to bring a little bit of Baltimore energy to this side of the Atlantic. We're here to talk all things Ravens, from the heartache to the highlights. It's fair to say that there hasn't been any highlights this season, but there's been plenty of heartache. The film breakdowns to the fan frustrations, all from our unique perspective as Raven fans living across the pond. And let's be honest, there's a lot to talk about right now. The Ravens are limping into the bye at 1-5, and the big question that everybody's asking: are we up shit creek without an or is or still there? Yeah, the defences look lost. The offense can't seem to finish drives, and patience in Baltimore is wearing thin. So today we're going to break it all down. What went wrong? Who's on the hot seat? And what needs to change before the Ravens come out the bye? So joining me tonight, you'll see there's four of us. Myself, Thomas, we've got DT joining us, Ollie is joining us, and also the well-spoken person, Richard, history teacher. Welcome to the pod, guys. Thank you for joining me.
Good to be here.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Lovely introduction.
Yeah.
So
I'm a fan of the puns.
Yeah. So before we get going, just so the listeners get to know a bit about us, I'll start off and then we'll just lead on from there. So I've been a Ravens fan since 2010. The first game was against the New York Jets, a game that the Ravens actually won. Go over to Baltimore every year. Without sounding like, if anyone's seen The Simpsons, you'll know that character, Troy McClure. And he goes, "Hi, I'm Troy McClure. You may remember me." I'm not going to be like him, but obviously, Baltimore sports fans might know me from the Orioles Across the Pond podcast. So yeah, that's a bit of my fandom. Ollie, tell us your story.
I think it goes back to year 9, science, physics, Mr. Woofenden. I was not doing any work in that lesson, and me and my mate were just surfing YouTube, and we were looking at all these different American football teams, and I remember Baltimore from when my dad was over there in the Navy, and I was like, oh, they look cool, and it was as simple as that. It was, they're not shit, they're consistently all right, and then I just fell in love with them. And I just kept watching, and that was 2008? But it's been up and down. Life gets in the way, doesn't it? And now I'm in a position to, digest everything again, football related, and stay up late. And my mum and dad can't tell me what to do.
I mean,
so yeah.
Since 2008, obviously you've seen some great things. I think during that time, has there only been one losing season? Richard, you'll be able to confirm that, or DT, you're the stat guys.
Well, I
one
believe
losing season since 2008.
2015 is the one that springs to mind for me.
It's not been bad going.
No.
So a season like this starting is a bit rough, but.
Yeah, it was definitely 2015, and the only reason I know that is because, as you say, we weren't shit when you started supporting them. I just got into it in 2016, so it was when we kind of were shit, and which was quite good for me because I didn't want to be a glory hunter and just suddenly support the Patriots or whatever other great team everyone seemed to want to jump on the bandwagon of. But that leads into my origin story. I used to watch the Super Bowl quite a lot and thought I wanted to get more into it because my friends were into it. They all had teams, so I thought, great way to get into it. Get a team. I have no affiliation. I have no dad who went in any navies or any other kind of affiliation with America. So the only way I had an affiliation was an American girl that I worked with at the time. And I said to her, who should I support? And she was from Baltimore. And she said, well, support the Ravens if you like. Then you'll have someone to talk to about it. We're not doing very well at the moment. So at least I'll have someone to talk to about it as well. And yeah, that's my story. If you ask my friends, they'll tell you it's because I fancied a girl at work and I chose where she was from, which actually made it into my best man's wedding speech as well. So that was a fun moment. But yeah, that's kind of when I started supporting. And the only reason I have was a girl at work.
That you fancy.
Yeah, that you fancy. We'll save the best to the last. So go on then, Richard. Give us your story.
I first started really paying attention to American football in 2012, and weirdly, I only watched half of that Super Bowl because I had to go to bed because I had school the next day. I was in sixth form, and I didn't didn't really know what was going on. But I do remember my brother kind of put me onto Ray Lewis and said, "This guy is insane. You need to watch his highlights." And I think that's really why I picked the Baltimore Ravens, which I appreciate is a very basic reason, but I refuse to believe anyone has it better than us, and I've never looked back.
No, I mean, your mum couldn't have picked a better person, really, could she, than Ray Lewis to kind of point you in the direction of. Ray Lewis actually is my favourite Raven of all time. I know Liam will probably be listening to this when this comes out on Friday. He will, as we all know, his favourite player is Joe Flacco. We all like to wind him up about Joe Flacco. So now we've got the introductions out the way, the awkward stuff, breaking the ice. Obviously, we all know each other from being part of the UK Ravens community. So, you know, we're always kind of talking Ravens football, usually talking other bits and bobs as well, whether it's birth charts from the resident Hermione Granger in the group, Billy, or whether we're talking about favourite biscuits, whether that's bourbons, pink wafers. We just don't know. So why are we in the position we are now? Let's shift focus, you know, and let's keep the plate spinning on the Ravens. Why are we in the position that we are now, 1-5 at this stage in the season? Is it just as simple as injuries have mounted up?
I think there's a few different reasons. I think we've been knocking on the door for so long, and I wonder if there's almost been a certain amount of complacency within the building, because we've essentially potentially should have gone to the Super Bowl more or less every year since 2019. And is there an expectation that that's just what we do, and other teams are moving on in their philosophy and we're kind of staying where we are?
DC, anything to add to that? Go on.
I don't know. I think our philosophy doesn't need to move on. It's been working, like you say. I think you go into this season, and we came off the back of a rocky start to last season. Everything kind of started ticking towards the end. The fence was purring. Everyone had expectations. We were the bookies' favourite to win the Super Bowl at the start of the season. Everyone was saying our defence were going to be the best defence in the league. We'd patched some gaps. We'd sorted our secondary. We'd drafted Malachi Starks. Everything was. I'm getting into optimistic mode because this is how I felt at the start of the season before things got interesting at the end of the first game. I think the injuries do have to play a large part of it on both sides of the ball. Even from an offense perspective, obviously recent games you kind of can't really talk too much about because it is just injuries across the board, and I don't think anyone expected anything of the last couple of games at least. But you look at the Bills game even, and although we put up a huge amount of points, we probably should have put up more. And I think it was that game when Lamar was taken out with cramp, and we didn't go for 4 because didn't go for it on 4th down because Lamar had cramp. I don't think he's been right all season. I think it's just been something that's tried to crack on with it, and for one reason or another, that just bled into the rest of the team, really.
Yeah, the thing with the Lamar, I think you're right there in regards to his injury. I seem to remember during the off season and in the ramp up to the season starting, there was a couple of occasions where he was missing practice, and it was. I don't think it was really kind of explained. Injuries have affected the season. Obviously, we'll talk about the defense in a minute. One thing that's concerning for me is that we are joint with the New York Jets for turnovers. That is one thing that has
Elite
to change
club.
for me. Yeah, 7 turnovers on the season so far. That is something. Go on, Richard.
I was just going to say, turnovers or gaining turnovers was a big emphasis coming out of last year's playoffs, something that they emphasised all off season. And we've given away 7 and we've only taken 3 ourselves. So it's very hard to win football games when you've got a negative turnover differential.
I think that's the biggest thing. I think it's not even the turnovers. I was just going to say, it's not even the turnovers are coming from, quarterback. Lamar still hasn't turned over the ball. That's like, it's not on the quarterback. Obviously, recently it has been, but we've seen them from places that we don't expect to see them. Henry dropping the ball 3 games in a row. No one would have predicted that. And then obviously in the last game, Zay Flowers dropping the ball. It just seems to be in every part of the field, and I don't know where that comes from, but it's obviously got to be addressed.
Yeah. So the figures are we show 10 turnovers and tied for the third fewest takeaways with 3. 5 fumbles lost and 5 interceptions. They've only recovered 2 fumbles and grabbed 1 interception. Obviously, you can't win games. You're not going to win games by turning the ball over, and you're definitely not going to win games by not getting turnovers. I just think that there is numerous things that we've discussed: injuries, turnovers. The big one for me, I think we'll all agree on, is just the absolute kind of poor performances from the defense. There was a stat that came out before the game last week where the Ravens already had eclipsed the amount of points conceded by the 2002 Super Bowl winning team. Does it fall directly on Zach Orr? Does it fall on the defensive back coach, Donald D'Alicio? Does it fall on defensive line coach, Dennis Johnson? Who is taking the brunt of this blame? Obviously, we're nearly, halfway coming to the end of the bye week. The Ravens don't play until next week. I personally think if there was going to be a change at defensive coordinator, it would have been done by now. I'm not saying that I think a change is right, because with the amount of injuries, I think if you replace Zach Orr now, it's the equivalent to rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic. It's just pointless exercise, isn't it? So where does this fall on what needs to change?
I think for me, it's very hard to blame coaches and coordinators when players are simply not executing their job. So obviously we've just seen OA be traded away. Ultimately, we are not getting any pressure on the quarterback, and professional level NFL players, if you're taking 50 pass reps against a tackle, you have to start winning some of them. And I just don't think the players are winning their individual matchups on the field. And I feel very sorry for Zach Orr, because I almost feel sorry for the secondary, because what are you supposed to do when the quarterback has, 8 or 9 seconds in the pocket to pick his throw every single time?
Absolutely.
I think you're right. I think. Go ahead, Ollie. Sorry.
It's, for me, like carrying on from what Rich was saying, then you're waiting for sort of splash plays to come out of nowhere. It seems like somebody needs. It's easier said than done. I do not play football, and I could not do it better than anyone. Maybe a couple. But there's no one. It's like taking accountability and stepping up to the plate with it. You need to see some sort of what's the word? Somebody stepping up and leading that sort of defensive line and sort of defense in general, and having that general back there. And it just doesn't seem like we've got anything to give with it. I know people have said in the chat over the past few weeks, it looks like we've given up with stuff. Sometimes I don't mind it. Like, it does look like we've got no answers for anything. And I totally get the mentality of heads going down. You're getting dogged on by some teams. You think you're the dog's bollocks coming into the season, and you're getting humbled week in, week out. But there needs to be somebody in there chirping up. Everyone's looking towards like your Hamiltons. Obviously, Roquan's out. There's nothing there. You saw what happened when Ray Lewis gave him a fucking hype man speech a few weeks back. Comes out, yeah, it's against the Browns, but we need someone doing that, showing that they're in it. Get the fans behind you a bit more. Everyone had gone home. for the other games. Have you ever seen it that empty before? You need to get someone who's rooting for the whole team to get the crowd behind it to get, a bit more out of it.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think it's easy to everyone to lay the blame on Zach Orr. And don't get me wrong, obviously, as a defensive coordinator, you kind of have to take the ownership of that, and that's fine. And you can take that. That's part of the role. But I think you're absolutely right. And, we knew our secondary was weak. We kind of fixed some gaps in the off-season. We drafted someone new. Stark's a new player. We don't expect him to be amazing from day one. Yes, he's a first rounder, but that's still going to come with some getting used to the schemes, getting used to the team. We've got Nate Wiggins, only second year. It's still fairly new. We tried to kind of fix a couple of other people at cornerback. We had some injuries. Jair Alexander was absolutely shocking in the first game, and he's seemingly fallen off the face of the earth. Like, it's a new group still in a big way. And to add to all the issues we have with not getting pressure and them just having time, if you're playing man, there's only so much time you can follow a person before you're either going to get a penalty called on you or they're going to get away from you. I think it has to come from that pressure up front, which we're just not getting. That's the biggest issue, I think.
Do you think we could see, if Shaq or do you think we could see kind of a change, reassign and play calling duties on defense? Because you look at some of John Harbaugh's comments, obviously he's come up kind of backed or and said his job is safe, but I'm kind of finished that with 4 now. Is there going to be in-house sticks? Do you think they will reassign play calling duties? Is that the direction to go?
I think there has to be some new play calling in some capacity. Like we saw in the last game against the Rams, obviously, since Zoe was traded, we don't have the same level of pass rushes. And there were some of the plays where we only saw 2-man rush on a kind of late downs. You're thinking, what's going on here? But, you're playing Hamilton further forward. That's great. But then you have to adjust the scheme for it. I think the buys come at the right time, both from injuries and from having to adapt the play calling. I think whether it's new plays or whether it's someone else calling the plays, I think we have to start experimenting a bit more to get to the quarterback.
Richard, what are your thoughts?
I think it's very difficult. Ultimately, we know Zach Orr's story. We love Zach Orr's story. But if you are going to appoint a young man to his first defensive coordinator position, and we can argue about the logic of that. The Ravens are a win-now team. You have to expect some up and downs. He's still learning. He's not a seasoned 30 years in the league defensive coordinator, Wink Martindale type. And I almost think, if you just bin him off now, like, what have you gained? Like, I do think Zach Orr is somebody they have a lot of faith in. I think they want to keep him in the building for a long time. It's very difficult. I think going back to that play, and he was kind of slaughtered for only rushing 2 on a 4th down. But why would you? You can't blitz every time. The 4-man rush just isn't getting home this season. You can almost understand the logic of, let's try and block up a couple more pass lanes. I'm not saying it's the correct call, but that to me does show that he's trying to innovate. I don't think he's calling that because he doesn't understand how to play defense in the NFL. I think he is desperately deep in his bag trying to find things to sort things out.
Ollie?
It's a tricky one. What do we gain by him going right now? It's too late, isn't it? We're not halfway through, are we? But there's a lot to there's a lot of changes that'll have to take place if he did go. He's obviously safe, isn't he? I sit there and think it'd be silly if he went, because it could just get even worse from that point. You've got wait to get Giggsy till end of season. You've got, what else can you do with him? I sit there and I think, like, you can talk about sort of the play call and all that, but when it comes to a lot of soft tackling, and like Rich said and DT said, like no pass rush. There's only so much you can build on from that. You know what I mean?
In regards to obviously players on the defense, who would each of you say is being kind of the most disappointing so far this season on defense? When I say that, like obviously, Malachi Starks has struggled. He's a 27th pick in the draft, but he's already six games into an NFL career, and he's still taking that step up. So we'll exclude him from that conversation. So with that being said, who has been the biggest disappointment?
I'll get it out there. He was mine, but also at the same time as, knowing full well he's a rookie and, it's going to go one way or the other, isn't it? I was expecting more from Mike Green, especially after the old ankle gate saga, and everyone getting excited that we might have a new pass rusher. But again, rookies being rookies, maybe. Has he got anyone around him allowing him to get around? Is everyone else doing their designated jobs? Maybe not at the moment.
Yeah, I think for me, I would go with Travis Jones in the middle of that defensive line. I think this is somebody who has received a lot of hype. I think we all think that he does have game-breaking potential, and he hasn't been able to show it. I think this is somebody, as fans, we've talked about, can we find the money to sign him? He's probably going to go for a big contract somewhere else. Well, I don't think he is at the moment. I think he's costing himself some money because he's not really impacting the stat sheet. Obviously, his partner in crime, Madubuike, has been injured, and I think that's what DT was talking about. Sometimes you need people to put their hand up, say, I'm the man, I'm leading this defense, I'm going to put in some good performances, and we've just not seen it from him, and we need him to step up.
It's a good point. I want to put a bit of a controversial one out there for me. I wouldn't say they're being the most disappointing, but I'm being disappointed in what I've seen from them, and that's Kyle Hamilton. It's a bit of a weird one because I know, he has been playing well, but compared to what we saw from him last year and what we were able to get from him, we've not seen it. And now that may not be down to him as a player. It may be down to how he's being used, and we saw this against the Rams just gone. He was used in a much more advanced position. He was getting to the line of scrimmage, and that's kind of what we want to see from him in that kind of attacking role. But we weren't getting the best out of him in the first 4 weeks, certainly. And I think that, when you've got a player who is now the highest paid safety in, even without the Ravens tinted glasses, the best safety in the league, he needs to be a player that every game we're looking thinking, yeah, fuck me, he's made a great play that game. He was the one that was putting everything on the line. He was the one that was there. He is our new Ed Reed kind of leader in that kind of defense almost. As I say, I don't think it's necessarily a comment on him. I just think that's where the play calling comes into it again, to be able to get the most out of a player like him that can change games and can create those turnovers.
I mean, I agree with DT on the Hamilton thing, and I'm not just saying that as a spoiled Ravens fan. To coin his quote, I think it's disappointing. If it got obviously, I think the kick in the teeth for me is the size of the contract he had, and I know we're struggling across the board, but you want to be seeing more from someone like that. Maybe that will change. Obviously, in the bye week now, this is time for them to rest up, get players back from injury. Lamar's going to be back after the bye. I think Pancake Pat Ricard's going to be back. They're going to be looking at schemes and trying to change things coming out of the bye. Go on, Richard.
I think it's quite difficult on Kyle Hamilton, and I think it's one of those where we understand. We've all talked about this. His best position is close to the line of scrimmage. He's a destructive, game-breaking, Swiss Army knife type of player. And I think through necessity, We saw Darius Washington injured in the off-season. Malachi Starks, who has had some rookie struggles, which I think is very understandable. You know what? He has been playing quite deep, and we're saying that he's not impacting the game. Well, I think quarterbacks are avoiding him. I don't think he's not showing up on the stat sheet because he's not capable of making the plays. I don't think he's had the opportunity to make the plays.
I think that makes sense. That's one of those ones. That's like the criticism that Humphrey gets every year. The amount of times I've seen people saying, "Oh, Humphrey's washed. He's not. I haven't seen him make an interception at all. You don't see anything from Humphrey." And it's like, well, yeah, you don't see anything from him because quarterbacks don't target him because he's all over his man. You know, if you're not seeing a deep safety or a cornerback on the screen much, it's because they're doing their job.
It's just a massive struggle. What do we need to be seeing? I was coming out of this bye week now. We've got the Bears next weekend. Is it the Bears?
It is the
Yeah.
Bears.
What do we need? What do we need to be seeing? Obviously, I mean, kind of sticking on the subject of Zach Orr. One thing I will point out to add to the list of injuries is the strength of schedule at the start of the season. You know, from week 1 to week 6, I think we have the first or second hardest strength schedule from after the bye to the end of the season. I think it's one of the easiest. So I don't know about you guys. For me, I look at from week 1 to 6 and where we are now. If you take like the injuries out of the scenario, I probably would have looked at. We probably could have been 4-2, maybe 3-3. You know, playing 500 football. Coming into the bye week, so maybe that is another thing that they're looking at: the strength of schedule, the injuries of not making a change with Zach Orr, and let's see what it's like after the bye. I think either way they're going to stick with him unless the season is, unless we're out of contention, then they might make the change then and just trying to get by to the end of the season. Do you think the strength of schedule and the injuries is a reason why Zach Orr is still safe in his job at this moment in time?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, Rich was talking before we got on here, and much as you were saying, the strength schedule at the start of the season, I was looking at it earlier, and it was like worst case. If you had to ask me at the start of the season, like worst case scenario, where would we have been? And it was like, where is it on here? So sorry, best case from for the rest of the season. Sorry, I've lost my notes on that. Completely lost track.
I think you were saying that you would have thought worst case scenario was 2-4 to begin the season.
Yes, worst case scenario 2-4. So you'd sit there and go, we'd beat the Browns, beat the Texans. Like this is it's not 2 panic stations for me. It's bad. It's bad, but it's not like this is the end. When you look at the teams we've got in the future, like honestly, looking at them like 8-3, finishing 8-3 with them, with the games left. So you got Bears, Dolphins, Vikings, Browns, Jets, Bengals, Steelers, Bengals, Pats, Packers, Steelers. I think to finish off 9-8, we may as well just see how it goes for a bit. Definitely, in my opinion. If it's going to go down the pan, it's going to go down the pan in the next 4 weeks, isn't it? And then we can write it off if it's that bad. Get somebody else in, and we see what happens from there.
Going into the Chicago with 3-2 in obviously a division where they're bottom of their division, the NFC North, on 3-2. It's not going to be an easy game, but as you say, the strength of schedule now between now and the end of the season. Where do we see it going? What do you think we're going to go? What, 5-7? Do you think we're going to perform better than that? Like, I know before the Chargers game, we were still favourites to win the AFC North. Now the odds in Las Vegas have the Steelers at -160 to win the division, and the Ravens is +160.
I don't see the Steelers as being like the favourites. I think that's just because we're like 1-5. I think that's our biggest opportunity, and I think actually it's great that we haven't really had any of the divisional games. And I think, you know, if we get players back after the bye, the only thing we need to do is to win the North. Like, that's it. You know, the other games can do what they do. I think we'll get plenty of results anyway out of the division, but the Bengals are terrible. The Browns are terrible. Steelers, we may lose one of the games. I think we win at least one of those games. That's all we need to do. And actually, I'd rather we get to the playoffs without being the hype behind us of we're the best team in, you know, the AFC. We've had that every year. It's not worked for us. We've had everyone's, you know, Lamar's MVP. He's nowhere near the top 10 at the moment on that. That's fine. Let's work under the radar this time. Let's get into the playoffs and then do our work in the playoffs rather than the other way around, as we've done the last however many seasons.
Well, Tom asked what we need to see, and I'm actually in Cardiff meeting up with some friends from Wales and the Southwest, and I'm going to be looking to see the bottom of a few pints. But I think one thing that has been lacking, even with the injuries, it hasn't felt like a team that's been fighting very hard. So, for instance, we've seen fumbles. We've seen linebackers falling off tackles left, right, and centre. For me, it's not really about the results. I do believe that we can still make it to the playoffs if everything goes well. I think we need to be almost perfect. I want to see this team playing with a bit of pride, because I think that's what we've been missing.
It's for me. It's not just pride. I need to be seeing effort. I think if you go back and have a look at some of the, you know, Ray Lewis's locker room talks and pre-game talks, and even when he's been on like the motivational speaker circuit, he pretty much just comes back to effort. You know, getting to the ball first, winning a tackle, breaking through the line of scrimmage. It's all effort, and that's what I need to see. I just think it's been lackluster across the board. You know, there are numerous things that we have discussed, which, you know, are catalysts for the position that we're in. I don't think this is too harsh, but I kind of get the feeling at times that it's kind of like a couple of players have just given up. When the game's getting a bit tough, you know, when the going gets tough, the tough have got running, in my opinion. Would you say that's too harsh?
I thought you were going to break into song then, but that was the opposite, wasn't it? Whichever
Who
boy band that was.
it. Yeah.
Billy Ocean one, yeah. And then who was it that covered it? One of the boy bands, I can't remember.
Westlife, wasn't it?
Westlife, something like that, yeah.
I do think you can feel moments in games. So to be fair, last week, we were in the game, you know, to an extent, and then, you know, there was one interception. The Texans capitalized and scored a touchdown, and I think everyone just knew, like, once we went down by 10 points, we weren't gonna win that game. There was a real energy shift within, you know, different chats that I'm part of, and it felt the same on the field, to be honest.
I think the biggest thing for me that I want to see that's actually not been talked about much is the offensive play calling. I think Todd Monken's not doing as well as he should be this season, and I think he's getting away with it because everyone's calling for Harbaugh, everyone's calling for Raw. I think he's probably sitting there thinking, Pete's off me, but I've not seen the kind of plays that I want to see from him. You know, we saw that last week at the Rams where we had 4 drives, 3 drives, whatever it was, on like less than a yard away, and we couldn't get the ball in the end zone. It was just trying to hammer it through. And, you know, that's some of that maybe on the players. Don't get me wrong, probably was fine to try and push it or whatever. But there's been so many plays where it's just not as inventive as we want to see on the offense. And with the caliber of players we've got, we should be able to do more. And I know, you know, the offensive line, you can call it on that if you want to, but we're used to seeing more you know, inventive plays. Even when Lamar was playing, you know, even before Lamar got injured, there was still a couple of plays where there was no coverage changes, there no inventive route running. You know, we just weren't creating the opportunities for the offense that we've seen in last season with Todd Monken.
In regards to the offense, and obviously some of the struggles on offense, Is there a Derrick Henry issue?
Yeah, his issue is he hasn't got Pat Ricard. That's the one.
Yeah,
Mhm.
that you were gonna say that, DC. Go on, Richard. What were you gonna say? You're probably gonna elaborate on that and give us some
Well, I
some
think for
posh
me,
analysis.
just on the eye test, Derrick Henry seems to have a lot more success when he's running outside the tackle at the moment, but we see Monken persist in sort of sending him inside the tackle, and we know our guards are the weakest part of that offensive line. And I don't know, it feels a bit like madness to keep doing the same thing and expect a different result. Um, I think I think it's a really fair point DT makes. Are we maximizing our offensive potential? I think there's a few players on offense, really. You know, Bateman was granted an extension and he's been anonymous. I think he's caught about 3 balls. Maybe it's slightly more than that. Um, you know, Tez Walker, we've seen him flash and, you know, make a couple of really nice touchdown grabs. And yeah, I don't think he's ready to be an every down player, but why are we not trying to, you know, work on a young player who has made some very splashy plays? Where's his opportunity coming from? I think, um, yeah, I think the offense, we talked a lot about the defense. I don't think the offense is getting away scot-free on this. I think the real wild card factor is Lamar Jackson because he makes things happen. Um, and I think in his absence, we've really seen how the rest of that cast are not playing to their potential. I mean, Zay Flowers, I love Zay Flowers, but if you're going to wear luminous pink gloves, you cannot fumble the ball twice in one game. It's
Yeah,
just,
so
it's just
when you turn up a
embarrassing.
five-a-side or Sunday league and some Blair's got bright green boots on, or the goalkeeper's
I
wearing
used
white
to have
boots, and
bright
you're
green
thinking,
boots, and
yeah.
I was that prick, and I'm in no way good enough at football to wear bright green boots. So I quickly fit a hole in those and had to. Oh no, I've got to get myself some black ones.
Do you know what I mean? But like bright coloured boots should only be worn by players with the ability to nutmeg a mermaid, in my opinion. And I, I'll stand by that. I mean, look, Richard, you mentioned Rashad Bateman there, obviously granted an extension. 11 receptions, 120 yards on the season. He's averaging, giving him an average of 10.9. Sat out the Texans game. Obviously, only had 1 reception um, against the Rams for 8 yards. 1 reception against the Chiefs. His highest game for receptions was against the Lions. Now, is this down to the Lamar injury? Is it down to the play calling? Is it down to Bateman's just getting covered? Where do you put the finger on this with Rashad Bateman?
You know, I think I have to put the finger on Bateman. We've seen him blow very hot and cold during his time in Baltimore. And to be honest, he's cold a lot more than he's hot. And, you know, I'm fully on board. I don't think we need to pay Jamar Chase money or Justin Jefferson money and have a true wide receiver one. I'm very happy with having, you know, an ascending Zay Flowers. And, you know, I think Lamar Jackson as quarterback can work with a cast of number 2 wide receivers, but you still have to turn up and play like a number 2 wide receiver. And I just don't think he is. I don't think he's looking interested. There was the route that he quit on that led to an interception. Um, I've lost I'm not sure which game that was in, but Harbaugh specifically called him out in the press conference.
Yeah.
This hasn't turned up to the races, has he?
No.
He's not, which pains me to say it because I'm a massive Bateman fan and I've always loved him. And when we signed him to his contract, I thought it was a huge bargain. But it's not going that way this season. I always had him as fantasy, thinking he's going to be my little one under the radar that's going to have massive games, and it's just not happening, is it?
No. In regards to the regards to the situation of quarterback, obviously any organization that loses a quarterback for any amount of time with the the caliber and the game playing ability and just he's just a polarizing figure on the football field in Lamar Jackson. Teams are going to struggle, but I go and look at 49ers. 49ers well documented that you know injury issues with Brock Purdy. Kind of they lost a lot of players in the off season. They were down to be struggling, but then you look at what Shanahan has done with Mac Jones there and the plays he called. Now I know Shanahan is renowned; he can make average quarterbacks look an awful lot better than they are. The Ravens signed Cooper Kush to a 2-year deal. I think it could be worth up to $12.2 million. With a $2.75 million signing bonus, $4 million guaranteed. How was Cooper Rush the right move to make? Because he's a total different quarterback to what Lamar is. And I say that because if Lamar goes down injured, the schemes and everything that we run are obviously made and catered to what Lamar can do with the ball. So when you lose him, as I say, someone like the 49ers, they've lost Brock Purdy. Mac Jones was coming and being able to pick up the schemes. We saw a bit of a difference when Snoop came in at the weekend. Was Cooper Rush a mistake? Should they have stick with Cooper Rush too long? Should Snoop have come in straight away? How big of an issue? Because with that, a lot of people do say the Ravens can be a one-man team with Lamar, and when things like this happen, it is, it kind of feels like the second string quarterback is just the polar opposite to the first thing, and then when things like this happen, it leaves a massive, massive hole.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think we should be able to have plays for Cooper Rush. Like we should be able to have plays that tailor to his skills. There's no reason why we don't have, like, going back to the receivers talk, we've got good receivers. We have players that can make catches. If Rush is more of a throwing quarterback, we should be able to do that. Maybe it's because the O-line is not doing what it needs to do in terms of giving him time to do that. I don't know. But yeah, I think, the weekend is an interesting one because I believe entirely that game was on our offense rather than our defense. It's weird to say that with the defensive issues we've had and the conversation around Orr, but I was at the Ravens in the UK first official watch party, and everyone was sort of buzzing at half time that we were only down 3 points. The defense was doing well. We just weren't cooking on offense. We had the opportunities to. We had some plays. We made some good runs. Henry had over 100-yard game, which was great, but we just then ended up capitulating at the end with Flowers turning the ball over this time rather than Henry. And yeah, it was more exciting when Snoop came back into it, and actually that gave us something to be excited about towards the end of the game that otherwise was just looking quite dire, to be honest.
Ollie?
Yes, I think.
Go on, Richard.
No, Ollie and I were discussing this before the pod. I thought Ollie had some fantastic ideas. I think over to Ollie.
Yeah, so it was like echoing exactly what you were saying, Tom, in terms of our whole sort of offense is designed around the sort of talismanic figure of Lamar Jackson, isn't it? He has the ability to extend plays that no other human being could do. Like, some of the stuff he does is absolutely wild. And it's almost become one-dimensional now. It's like everybody knows Cooper Rush is very vulnerable. He's quite static, isn't he? He just sits in the pocket, anything comes, and he takes a lot of hits. But obviously now our team is ready for the unexpected a lot of the time. And Cooper Rush is unable to give any of that, is he? He's going to sit there, he's going to get hit. And then all of a sudden we just rely too much on, let's give it Henry and let him run straight into everyone immediately. And it's just made us so one-dimensional.
Yeah, I find it interesting from a schematic point of view. We know Lamar is that X factor player, But I think every year of Lamar's career, we've seen him look to run less. He has less designed runs, and his throwing ability has got a lot better. And so I'm not too worried about having a Cooper Rush figure as your backup, because what all you want in your backup really is somebody that can keep the offense on track. This is Ravens football. We should be relying on our defense to keep the other team's scores low. And I think ultimately Cooper Rush has won a lot of games as a backup quarterback in this league. And I can see the logic in going, we think Cooper Rush can maybe win 50% of his games to keep us in the hunt for the playoffs should anything happen to Lamar. I do think that where the problem has come is the our O-line really is not up to standard, and therefore we don't have a dominant running game that we would have thought we could have relied on with Derrick Henry. And Cooper Rush is just really not getting any time to let plays develop and wide receivers get open. And so, although it doesn't look like a good move, I think the logic was actually really sound.
I was just about to say, I think the biggest thing is the O-line. I think where Lamar excels is making our O-line look good. And I think he makes our O-line look so much better than they actually are. And I think when you put Cooper Rush in there, who's a much less mobile quarterback, who's much less able to move out of that pocket and escape any kind of rushes, that's where it really highlights the big flaws in our O-line. Defenders are getting to our quarterbacks way too quick, and Rush just can't do what he should be able to do because of it, which is why, Snoop's slightly more mobile quarterback came in and actually had some success, I think.
I agree with you. I just don't think I just think the mistake made in the offseason in bringing in somebody like Cooper Rush on that value of a contract, and could be a 2-year deal. I've mentioned the value before. I just think I think that was a mistake. I didn't see like the free agency market for QBs. I didn't see whether there was someone that we possibly could have traded to bring in and be a kind of better backup. Yes, the O-line is being poor, and you lose that dominant run game. Hopefully, with injuries coming back and of this bye week, and they've worked on things and rested up, and maybe Coach John Harbaugh has rallied the troop by giving it the old "who's got it better than us." Well, at the moment, John absolutely fucking everybody, but you never know, and
Apart from the Jets.
Yeah, apart from the Jets, which is a scary thing to say. Ever putting the Ravens and the Jets in kind of the same bracket of how shit they are is it's disturbing. So we've spoken about the Ravens. There's going into this weekend, we'll have a little bit of a chat about around the NFL. Obviously, probably focus on the division. For me, the Bengals Steelers game, which is 1:20 in the morning, our time. I think there's a little bit of needle in that. Obviously, Joe Flacco traded to the Bengals, and then Mike Tomlin's come out and kind of dig the Browns out a little bit about trading a decent backup QB to a divisional rival. That's a game I'm looking forward to see. I've just been looking through some of the fixtures for this week. Chargers Colts is possibly one that could be a good game. You've got the Patriots. They've got the Titans at home. I've just been looking at the Patriots. Patriots are 3-0 on the road. I think 1-2 at home. So I fully expect the Patriots to win. What are we watching, guys, the weekend, other than with the Ravens obviously on a bye week? What games are we going to be watching?
Yeah, I think for me, I'm very much a red zone I'm very much a red zone type of guy. Obviously, keeping up with all of the various fantasy leagues that I'm in. I'm not necessarily too concerned about a specific game. I just want to see all those touchdowns going.
I want to see what Dumb and Dumber. Sorry, D2. Go on.
Nah, crack on, mate. You go.
I want to see what Dumb and Dumber's up to for the Giants. Crikey, they're good fun to watch, aren't they? At the minute, I mean, they've been probably the best thing to happen to them for a wee while, isn't it? And just seeing what antics they're up to. That's one I'll be keeping my eye on, just to see if Scatterboo gives himself any more CTE at the weekend.
Needs to get him one of those. Who's the guy in X-Men? The Juggernaut. Needs to get one of those bigger helmets so he can just smash through walls. That's what he needs.
I think he wears his helmet to bed.
I think it's just molded to his head at this point, isn't it? I don't think he can take it off. It's just fused in.
There's that video of him against the wall in college, isn't there? Just like
I was just about to say that. Yeah. He's going to be a contender for joining Antonio Brown, isn't he, on CT ESPN?
Yeah.
There was a guy in my high school that used to headbutt drawing pins. He used to put them on the table and just headbutt drawing pins. I'm pretty sure if they didn't know better, then I would say Scatterby went to high school in Luton.
Yeah, that guy you were talking about, who you went to school with, DC, he had a kid, and Richard was teaching him food technology last year. It turns out he was the pasty kid. For those who know,
wouldn't surprise me.
The famous, the infamous pasty kid, I should say.
Yeah, so Battle of the Nursing Home, Pittsburgh, Rodgers, Joe Flacco. Yeah, I think the surprising thing to me, and why I still have a kind of a little bit of faith that, I mean, and obviously we've got all the division games to play, is the league is just so wide open now. I didn't have the Bills getting beat the other night. Obviously the Chiefs got off to a poor start.
I can't believe that Mahomes is still favourite for MVP. I think, given the games they've lost, they got by the Lions through some really dodgy ref calls, which we're not going to get into that because that could be a theme every week. But there were some terrible ones in that, and the love for Mahomes is always going to baffle me.
Talking of MVP, you've mentioned it now. If you were to call the MVP now at this point in the season, who would you give it to? For me, it's a kind of I didn't like him because he was a QB for a divisional rival.
I know what you're gonna say,
but I really, really like him now, and I hope he has kept the receipts from some of the tripe that was getting spouted about him by Colin Cowherd. I listen to a lot of Colin stuff. He's not as bad as Nick Wright, but some of the stuff he was saying about, I remember he was saying to Baker that his agent needs to be kind of telling him now that let's save the brand and all this kind of lark. You look at what he's done since he's gone down to Tampa. For me now, Baker Mayfield would be if the MVP was decided at week 7, he would be my MVP.
I'd love to see it. I'd love any success story of someone getting out of the Browns and actually showing how shite an organisation they are and how much they just destroy careers. That's a great story for me. The other thing I will say, though, on the MVP category is it's moments like this when you realise just how much of a valuable player Lamar is when, he goes out the game and we are screwed. Even when we were terrible, we were still putting up 40 points. So that shows how valuable Lamar is.
Who are you saying, Richard?
Yes, it's a real tough one, isn't it? I don't know that there's any standout contenders across the NFL. I mean, maybe I have a lot of love for Jared Goff because he wins me fantasy championships year on year. So maybe he should actually get some actual silverware to put on his wall. So yeah, I'm gonna say Jared Goff because I think he does such a good job within that Detroit offense of just keeping everything on track. I think he makes big plays when he has to. So yeah, that's where my vote would go.
I'd love it to be a Ravens-Lions Super Bowl. That's always been my pick. If we were to choose an opponent, for me, it would always be the Lions, and not just because my best mate's a Lions fan, but I'd love to see that game. I think it'd be two great great teams going up against it.
It probably should have been as well the last couple of years, you know, both teams have played.
How did you become best mates with Dan Campbell?
Well, you know, I've got those connections, me.
Before we round up, obviously, you know, I'd posted on socials and in the WhatsApp communities that we're in. If anybody had any questions for the pod, now a few of these to listeners that will be listening at first will probably understand the kind of inside joke to these questions. Us three being me, DT, and Ollie definitely do, and they're all aimed at Richard. So Richard. First question. Let me just get easy to just get it up on my phone again here. Apologies. If you were to describe the Ravens season so far using I think it was a World War II tank, what tank would it be and why?
That's a really, really good question. Yeah, there is something that comes to mind. So in 1943, the Germans introduced this tank called the Panther, and it was meant to sweep all before it, and it just broke down a lot, and it set itself on fire, and ultimately it didn't succeed. It needed a lot of rebuilding, and I think that's exactly where we are as a team.
That was off Ben from the Northwest group, so thank you for that one, Ben. And then another one. I think this was just off Ollie. I think this might have been not Ollie who's on the pod, Oliver. On a scale of beige to green, where did Richard's food choices for the evening land?
Well, actually, reasonably green. So, so
Good kind of green or green potato kind of green.
Yeah.
they said the green component of my dinner tonight. I had some chicken. With that wasn't green, but
you've got issues there, mate. If your chicken's green, yeah.
with it, I had some roasted vegetables, and within that roasted vegetables, there was a leek and there was a green pepper.
Of course, it was.
Yeah. As I say, people listening will know that Richard is a massive fan of leaks. So much so, I've got him saved in my phone as the leak buggerer. That's not insinuating what he does with leaks or does to people with leaks. That's just what I call him. So
that was just coincidence that does also happen.
You know what they say?
Yeah.
That old phrase, a leak a day.
Yeah. So time to finish on a positive. You know, from each and all of us. What's your positive so far for the season from the Ravens? Whether that be a player, you can't really say a coach because you know John Harbaugh would give a wooden leg cramp at the moment. Zach Orr couldn't organise a piss up in a brewery. So give us each one positive for the season so far.
Give us 5 minutes, Tom.
Silence.
So I'll go first. I'm gonna go D-Hop is my positive of the season. You know, a couple of one-handed grabs, some unbelievable catches. I didn't have him being as good as he has been. Not saying that he's been outstanding. I think he's just kind of being the diamond in a offense that's a bag of coal at this moment in time. So D-Hop is my positive.
I'm happy to go next. So I'm going to go with our very own Ted Yee Buchanan. So 4th round rookie linebacker. I think he's exceeded expectations. You know, he's very quickly become second on the depth chart with all of the injuries that we faced. He found himself wearing the green dot. I think we may have come across a hidden gem. He plays on the special teams units. Could be the next great Ravens linebacker.
Fair enough. Go on, Ollie.
It's a tough one, isn't it? I think it's not got much to do with how we're playing, but the best thing so far, and I think this might have even started before the season, Hamilton's extension. That's all I've got. That's all I've got. We've got him for a while now. If we're talking about right now, just the fact that it's looking like most people are going to be back in time for Chicago. It's looking that way, and I'm not paying all that money to go and watch Cooper Rush command.
I kind of feel the urge that whenever Hamilton's name gets mentioned, to ask whoever's mentioned his name is, "Are you spoiled?"
But yeah, that's as good as it gets for me.
I think for me, the player that I think I have been impressed with, in a sense of they've just carried on what they were already doing, is Nate Wiggins. I think I've seen some great plays from him. I think he's still, still only second year. He's still made a couple of mistakes, but I think there's been so many opportunities, so many times in other teams where players have had an okay rookie season and then it's kind of collapsed a bit. I think Nate's doing well. I think he was picked on a lot last year, and I think people have tried to pick on him this year, and sometimes it's come off. But I think for the most part, he's covering his man well. He's making some plays. He's on the verge of some great interceptions every pick, every sort of throw nearly. I think he's a great cornerback, and I think we've done really well to pick him last season.
Fair enough. So yeah, that is us for episode 1. I hope you've enjoyed listening. As I say, this is our first podcast all together discussing the Ravens. There's going to be a competition and giveaway that's going to go out probably tomorrow morning. We'll announce the winner on week 2's podcast. And we'll obviously, there's a big bag of Ravens merch that is up for grabs for one lucky winner. You can follow us on Instagram, TikTok, X, Ravens Across the Pond on all of them platforms. Like and subscribe on Spotify, Apple Music, and it'll be on all other podcast providers, Pocket Casts, Amazon Music. So yeah, that's us. Thank you for listening. Thank you for joining us. Richard, DT, Ollie, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure to talk about something as depressing as the Ravens. So thank you very much. We've been Ravens Across the Pond. We'll catch you on the next one.
See you later, everyone.